Projects Committee meeting for May 2nd. And we will call our meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Is there anyone who wishes to make comment on any item not listed on today's agenda? Seeing no one come forward, we will go on to, if us memory serves, I can tell you what's next on the agenda. Approval of the minutes, that's right. Minutes and then consent calendar. I got it. Minutes first. Any additions, corrections, or a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion. I have a second. Arnrich and Butt. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Oppose?
Not opposed, but I'll abstain. I wasn't here.
Okay. You're allowed to vote anyway, technically.
Oh, sorry.
That's the attorney's opinion.
All my other meetings, you can't vote if you weren't there to witness it. But okay, thank you.
Can't make changes.
Well, our attorney says we can, so that's what we do. All right, very good. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Is there anything anyone wishes to pull?
Yes.
Yes.
Just two quick questions to our illustrious financial wizard. Under investments, this is just a comment. Under investments, we have an IBM commercial note, $3 million. It's the only thing in our entire portfolio that is a single A rated. And a lot of agencies, I know ours is one of those that I'm with. On commercial paper, general rule is in the world we live in today, anything under AA may be a risk because if it falls from an A to a B, there's a real drop in value. AA to A isn't much. But anyway, just food for thought that maybe as we look at and projecting forward with the economy that we might want to see maybe there's a policy there that says that commercial notes, commercial paper and things might want to be AA and above. Just a little higher credit quality matches our portfolio perfectly. The other thing is just on our update of our budget for the 9 months. What? I don't know if you completely were involved in this, Brian, but we had a $14 million variance, our biggest single item, which was unexpected revenue from interest. And I was wondering, how did we estimate it that high, and because our rate of return on our portfolio and that stuff is great. Really good.
So I'll touch on the first item you talked about. Our investment policy is A to above. So when I do the update to the investment policy, I can change that as we look forward. That's a good comment on that, so we can fix that piece. And I'll also look at the maturity on this IBM one, and then if it's coming up too, but if it's a longer term one, we can swap it out maybe depending, and I'll work with our investment advisors on that piece. The big swing, the second item, the big swing on our investment income, when we closed the fiscal year last year, we were down it had a market value of about $1.4 million negative, all of our investments, due to the fact that we had some investments that were, as the interest rates went up, we lost a lot of value on paper. Sure. So it's all paper in there, and we hold everything to maturity unless there's a situation where we can swap something out for a longer term and have a much larger gain. So as our portfolio in the last year has come closer to maturity, some of our things, the value of those due to the interest rates have changed, and so the market value is swinging up. And right now, when I looked at the portfolio just yesterday, our portfolio has a market value of a plus 400,000. So when we do our CAFR, everything's based off of the day. If you had to close business today, what is it worth today? And that's the way we report our financials. So there's the accrual of interest in there, but then there's the market value that is really swings a lot. And last year on our financials and the year before, it was always carrying a negative market value. But now that we're getting closer to maturity, they have their value is a little bit more. So,
okay, great. I appreciate that.
I'll try and add some description in that in the future.
No, that's great. Thank you very much. And with that, I'd move the items as presented.
All right, very good. We have a motion.
And a second.
and a second for approval of the consent calendar. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. That again was Arnerich and Butt for the motion and the second. All right, we are on to our regular agenda items, legislative update. And I see our ambitious person from Sacramento here, Mark.
He's got a lot to report, but before he gets
Before
started,
he does, it's Lindsay's turn.
I just want to highlight a few things in your report on the federal side. I think at the last APC meeting, we let you know that we won an $8 million grant to do mobility on demand in Contra Costa County and eventually the region. So you'll see that noted in here. We're really proud of that. We are the only award in California and the only local government agency in the nation to actually get an award. You may have heard in the news that the leading Democrats and the president have agreed on a $2 trillion infrastructure number. Of course, we'll be watching closely to see if anyone has any wonderful ideas how to fund that dollar figure. But that has been, kind of front and center in the news. So we just wanted to let you know that our lobbyists in DC are keeping a close eye on that. And especially now as Congress is in budget season, that's actually where our executive director is this morning. He is in DC with our federal advocates, visiting some different committees and meeting with our delegation to help make sure that CCTA and the county's transportation priorities are top of mind. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark, since Sacramento has been very busy these past few weeks.
Yes, it has. Thank you very much.
Welcome, Mark.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. First off, I just want to give you an update. We have a new Cal STA Transportation Agency Secretary, David Kim, who many organizations in the state know from his prior work experience working initially for Gray Davis as the governor's representative in Washington, then later working for LA Metro, and then the last decade or more working in various positions at FHWA. He's most recently acting as the governmental affairs lead for Hyundai. So he comes to the position with a great understanding of California and how the federal program is administered and works. So I think that's unique in most recent decades for a secretary. Brian Annis, who had been the secretary for the last year, has moved on to the High-Speed Rail Authority as the chief financial officer, which I think is probably a very challenging job. But he's up to it with his finance and legislative analyst background. So we're going to miss his stewardship of getting SB1 launched well, but he'll do fine at High-Speed Rail, and I think it's time for somebody like David Kim to come in. Legislation, there's been a couple bills that are of high interest locally that I wanted to report on. First is AB 1475, which is Ms. Bauer-Kayen's bill that she's carrying on behalf of the authority to allow CMGC procurement to be used by this organization on behalf of communities within the county, within your jurisdiction. Originally, the bill was drafted to be broader. When it was introduced, it was limited to just San Ramon Bridge for the Iron Horse Trail. But at the urging of the chair of Assembly Trans, they've expanded the bill. It went out on consent, and it went out of appropriations on consent. So it's a very popular bill, and I think it's a good bill for a freshman member to carry. So we're looking pretty good, and I think it will have a good shot in the Senate and down to the governor. The other bill I just want to mention lightly is sponsored by the Board of Supervisors. This bill would relieve the county of the obligation to make repayments for 30-plus-year-old grants that led to the acquisition of the Iron Horse Trail. It's been a long, long trip to get to this point, and we almost didn't get the bill set. But finally, the chair decided to set it, and the bill flashed out of committee on consent. So it is one of those bills that's uniquely not an appropriation or cost bill, so it's going to go straight to the floor. And we're working with, I'm assisting and working with the author's office to make sure that any questions about whether it's a state mandate or not are addressed before it's taken up. So that bill is finally moving, and I think the county will be relieved if and when it's enacted. One other bill I just want to mention in passing, AB 1810 is a brand-new concept bill for the transportation world. We've had what they call omnibus bills, which are technical cleanup bills, purely technical items, changing, subdivision A to subdivision B, correcting that kind of stuff. In this case, it's a committee bill, so we haven't seen the Transportation Committee do minor policy items in a bill before in one bill. But the chair and chief consultant are moving ahead with this bill, AB 1810, and it looks like it's going to be the home to two items that I've been working with Lindsay on that have to do with a modest revision to your bond law in the current code sections and a correction or an update to the retention language that has proven to be troublesome. So we'll see that. Finally, a couple of housing items I wanted to mention because that is the order of the day in Sacramento. Lindsay was kind enough to send me a pictorial-gram of the housing bills that are of importance to the Bay Area. I think it was prepared, I'm not sure, by your staff or MTC or in collaboration, but it was very helpful to take a look at. But the first bill I just want to mention is one that we looked at a year ago in one form and in a different form this year, and that's Mr. McCarty's bill, AB 1568, that would have conditioned receipt of local streets and roads money from SB 1 upon making progress. Last year's bill said production progress. This year's bill was modified to make zoning actions the targets. He was pressed on again this year. He has now dropped out any reference to transportation. What the bill now says is a city or county can't compete for a state grant if they're not meeting their targets. But he exempted anything that's covered by Article 19 of the Constitution, which means none of the transportation dollars would be held or not be eligible for competition for a city that's, a few strikes off their target. So we'll see how that goes. The governor's proposal, which is very similar to the McCarty bill when he announced it in the budget, is expected to be abandoned. And we're waiting for May revise to see that. I think the worst we might see is he may adapt the McCarty approach, which would be limiting grants to qualified entities, but also leaving transportation out. It turned out to be, SB1 turns out to be a hot button if you're trying to use it negatively, and we've, in Sacramento, have enforced that. Last, I was going to try to talk a little bit about SB 50 and what happened, but the bill came out in print today and this morning, and I haven't had a chance to reconcile how they blended SB 50 with SB 4, which was the bill by McGuire and Bell to accelerate production. So I do have a fact sheet that I was able to grab, and I'll share it with Lindsay, and if I can write something up in the next week so she has that, I'll get that out to you. But it was too much to read in one morning on the way up here, so I apologize for that. And with that, I conclude my report.
Well, it will be very interesting to see how it comes out in print versus what we heard when we were watching the hearing. I was watching it on TV. Newell was there, and Teresa was there as well, and both testified on that bill. But it will be interesting to see what the fine print says about how they blended it. I would just say, as an editorial comment, they went from one size fits all to two sizes fits all to buy the votes. Mm-hmm. So I think there is still a great deal of concern over that bill, if not maybe more now than there was before, because they bought off the Central Valley and the smaller counties. So anyway, that's a rather cynical comment, but anyone else have comments or questions of Mark?
Share your comments.
Yeah, yeah, it's two size fits all, and we buy the votes, and the motion was made by the Central Valley, so it's like, whoa, okay. All right, well, thank you. You got a comment?
Just two quick things. First, there's no action items for today, so just want to make sure you understood, or I didn't communicate that earlier.
Right.
And secondly, I spent 8 hours in that committee that day, and I was one of the last bills presented, but it was a pleasure to run into board members
right.
in real life, in action in Sacramento. So appreciate that.
Yes, well, that was an opportune day to be there for our state legislative action day for the league. And I was watching on TV from my desk, and I saw the back of Newell's head, and I saw the curls from Therese, and I could recognize several of my other colleagues from around the Bay Area because we've been working on this housing legislative working group through ABAG MTC to try to figure out where we are on some of these numerous bills and how they might impact us. And so I recognized quite a few of my colleagues up there, and so they were doing a great job on our behalf. But thank you. It will be interesting to follow these. Thanks, Mark. Anything else, Lindsay? Okay. I don't think there's any action we need to take at this point. So with that, we will move on to item 14, project and project management services for the construction program. And I'm guessing that Ivan's going to handle this one.
Yes, good morning, Chair and committee members. Ivan Ramirez, the Director of Construction, and this is an action item where staff seeks authorization for the Chair to execute agreement number 521 with Coal Management and Engineering in an amount not to exceed $3,446,800.99 to provide project and program management services for the construction program from July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2022, and authorize the Executive Director to make any non-substantive changes to the language. Before I proceed to my presentation, I want to note that on page 14-3 of your packet, on the second paragraph, the first sentence reads, the maximum score for the interview was 107 points. That is inaccurate. That is actually the maximum score was 107 points. That includes the proposal, the interview, and also the additional points that are awarded for local consultants that submit their proposals. Having said that, excuse me, the authority approved staff to issue RFP 19-3 on February 20th, 2019 for program and project management and construction. We received 3 proposals. They were due February 27th, 2019. 2 proposals were local. That was Coal Engineering and Management, and also Avila Project Management. The third proposal was Next Phase Engineering, and they were based out of Fresno. Only 2 firms made the shortlist for interviews. That was Coal Management and Engineering and Avila Project Management. Those interviews were held on April 9th. And the selection for both the proposal and the interview are given in your packet, but they were based on qualifications, maximum 30 points. Proposed staff and organization, and that was a maximum of 40 points. And the detailed work plan, which had a maximum points of maximum score of 30 points. So on page 14-3, we have broken down the amount of the contract for each of the fiscal years from 2019 to 2022. And in addition to that, I want to call out that there's an additional line there for McKelvey pedestrian overcrossing. And we have put into this contract, and we ask you to recommend to the board to approve $963,732.80 so that this firm performs the construction management. The way we normally do this in our contracts is we actually issue an RFP, we bring the CM firms, we qualify them, and of course, we end up hiring one. This project is fairly small. The timing of it is not really known at this point just because we don't have all the funds available to bring this project to construction. But staff believe that there's efficiencies to be gained here in 2 forms. One is they already performed the constructability review, this group, because we don't have the funds to bring the CM firms ahead of releasing it for construction. So there's efficiencies there that they already know the construction, the design. And in addition to that, having to go through the process of soliciting an RFP and then having the ongoing management of the CM and the invoices that get submitted every month have to be reviewed, approved, and so on. So we believe that this is an effective way to eliminate those additional costs and inefficiencies. But I recognize, or staff recognizes, that this is something different than we've done before, so I broke it down so you can see it broken down in that sense. With all of that, again, I am open to questions.
Okay, questions? Tom?
What's the construction cost of the McClomy pedestrian overcrossing?
Construction cost is about $8 million, but let me double check. About $8 million. So we have estimated here about 12%, 13% of the construction costs for construction management services.
We're in the wrong business. I said, we're in the wrong business. You get paid more to watch than to design.
Yeah. Any other questions, Newell?
I was just looking them up. Have we worked with Cole before?
Yes, there are current PPM services for construction.
We've listed, the company is listed, their acronym is CME. That actually stands for Coal Management Engineering. In our report, it's not written that way. So
It is not written that way in page 14-2, and that actually confused me as I was reporting this morning. But I think everywhere else is captured as CME. So that's another typo that needs to be corrected.
Great. With that, I'd move, sorry.
Okay.
Oh, is this, you kept mentioning the dates for the construction program. You said 2022, and on our notes, 2021.
Well, but, you got,
Who's writing
the
those
board
things?
is paying attention.
Who's writing those things up?
Yes, we. I don't want to win any excuses, but I don't know if you remember when I made the presentation at the last board meeting. I immediately walked out because I was heading out on vacation. That night, I was packing my bags, and I submitted this report as I was leaving. When I came back, it was printed. So there's no excuse, but that's really what ended up happening. So the report needs corrections for sure.
So it's 2021 or 2022?
It's 2022.
Okay.
I'd move the item then as presented. Thank you.
I'll second it.
Okay, motion by Erner, second by Taylor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously.
Commissioner, may I make a comment?
Yes.
So I just want to thank the board and the committee because the construction program really has ramped up. We're running our two biggest programs, or projects, I should say, so the program is running at high steam. And under the leadership of our executive director, we've been able, and the board, we've been able to move this construction program forward. So I appreciate you allowing staff to bring the right resources for the projects that we need. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So
Well,
when do
thank
you go
you.
back on vacation again so we know the dates? Just thought I'd ask.
Okay, that's enough out of you, Mr. Taylor. All right. Next item on the agenda is correspondence and news clippings, and then commissioner and staff comments. I don't have any reports. Any commissioner reports? None. Executive staff comments? None. Oh, my
we're good.
goodness. Well, then, any other business? All right, we have no closed session, so we are adjourned to our next meeting on Thursday, June 6th. Thank you all.